And welcome back to the Morning Drill. Joining us this morning is State Representative Kathy Rapp. Good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Luke. I'm fine. How are you?
Good. Good to see you this morning.
Good to see you. Beautiful day. What a wonderful summer we've had this year.
It's been great.
Yeah.
And you've been working hard.
I've been back and forth and on the road a lot, that's for sure.
Well, what's going on? Tell us what's been happening in Harrisburg, and we'll start with the state budget.
Well, we completed the state budget just before the 4th of July. I did not vote for the budget or any of the taxes. I did vote for the education code. The state budget has a 5% increase, which I believe is just too much growth in government. A lot of that is justified as far as growth in spending, as far as pensions, more money for education, which is debatable, and some other mandated programs that are within the budget. But I think the overall increase was too much at 5%. I don't have a problem with increasing certain line items, but we saw no decreases. One of the things that bothered me was the increase for what we call the non-preferred, which is the universities like Penn State, Pitt, Lincoln, University of Penn. Last year, they received a 5% increase, with the understanding that they would be level funded this year. However, the senators and that represent some of those universities lobbied for a 2% this year. So within 2 years, they're receiving a 7% increase.
Wow.
So I did not, at the end of the day, vote for those universities to receive an increase. But I did vote for the education code. I actually had a bill in the education code, but that's not why I voted for it. Obviously, I am on the education committee. I chair the special education subcommittee on special education. The bill that I had within the education code was to allow school districts to give a credit for computer math and computer science. A lot of school districts do not give credit for computer math and computer science, but with digital technology and with the growth and advancement of technology in careers, and this was actually brought to my attention by a career and tech school teacher, asked me if I would put the bill in legislative form, in which we did. It's not a mandate, it's an option. We still have hold harmless as far as school funding, which helps our rural school districts immensely, including the Titusville School District. And I have the figures here for what Titusville will be receiving. They'll be receiving an increase of 2.6% and an increase of 1.6% for special education. So their total funding is $15,799,478. So when we look at rural school districts, and I will say that our colleagues who represent growing school districts as far as student population, they are still very unhappy with the rural school districts receiving these amounts of money. As you know, I represent Warren County School District and Forest School District as well, those two being consolidated school districts. But what we are seeing is our school districts are in decline as far as student population. And many school districts who are in growth areas and who have student growth receive less money per student. We are trying hard to hang on to that hold harmless funding in the formula, but it's getting harder and harder to justify. And we justify these amounts because of our economic base or lack of, and the amount of federal and state land we have in the 65th District. We have been able successfully to hang on to these funds, but it's always a concern of mine each and every year that we can continue to bring back these amounts of money for our school districts. Every school district I know is struggling with the pension debt, which is one of the big increases in the budget. I believe it was a $350 million increase in the budget for pensions, which is something we've talked about this for several years now, how we have to be able to change and reform pensions in the state of Pennsylvania. But we continually get a pushback from the unions, and we have powerful unions, and all of our state employees are either in the state employees pension plan or the teacher pension plan. So we're always getting a huge pushback from those unions regarding pension reform. But it is eating up our school budgets, and I'm sure this is a big impact, pensions on Titusville. I know it is in Warren and Forest. But
I think it goes beyond schools as well. I mean, we talk to city governments that are struggling with that.
Yes, and it is a huge issue, but it's the pushback. I have voted for pension reform. I will continue to vote for pension reform to try to rein in that cost of pensions. These are everybody in the state system. These are your neighbors who are not in that state system. We're taking money out of their pockets to give to the people who have state pensions, and it's not fair.
I wonder, I was listening to you talk about the hold harmless and the tension between the rural school districts and others. That seems like a constant and ongoing battle, not only with education, but with other issues as well. How do you work out the tension or the?
We have a lot of debate in caucus. This is not necessarily a debate that we have had on the House floor. Those debates, up to this point in time, have basically been constrained within our caucuses. However, I have a colleague who's had conversations with me. Actually, he gave me a phone call last year, and he used Warren County School District. He called me up and he said, I'm looking at your figures. You have about 4,000 students in your particular school district. I have 3 times that, and I have about $10 million less coming to my school district versus what you're getting for yours because of hold harmless. And hold harmless basically means that every school district will receive at least the same amount of money that you received the previous year. So that's the baseline. But the debates in caucus are becoming more and more embroiled because of the student growth areas, which is basically, I think I talked about this before, the growth areas in the state are over by the Pocono areas, Monroe, Pike, down in Cranberry Township around Butler, and then over in southeast PA near the Maryland border, and of course around Philly somewhat. And so those are our growth areas, and we are in a population decline. So that's the debate. We've been able to, because of some of our leadership, when Representative Sam Smith was our House leader and speaker, he's from Punxsutawney. So we were able, to hold the line, keep hold harmless. Senator Joe Scarnati is from Jefferson County, represents rural school districts. He's a senator pro temp. Obviously, he's in favor of hold harmless. But it is becoming more and more of a battle, and we're willing, the rural legislators are still willing to fight that battle.
Do those school districts, do they understand that this is kind of an issue as enrollment is in decline? I
talk about this frequently, in articles and in my newsletters, but a lot of people do, even school board members, do not grasp what hold harmless really means to their funding from the state, unfortunately. and they see this amount of money and think, oh, everybody's getting this amount, and that is not true. As a matter of fact, Titusville, Forest, Warren, as I said, they're getting more dollars per student. And so we're always debating that issue. Our reasoning is always the economic base, the money or the land that's owned by state and federal government that's not developable. So that's always been our argument, but I'm not sure if we can continue winning that argument.
Well, I'm sure the numbers don't lie. I mean, it seems to make sense to me when you look at the population. The population is in decline. That means a declining tax base. And I'm sure that, this is singing to the choir, but of course, if those funds go away, those school districts hurt more.
Absolutely. And I even use the fact that these are consolidated school districts for Warren and Forest. We've already done what we can do to try to lower the cost.
And Mark's been covering Pencrest, and they've been $5 million in the hole. Now they're adding half of that.
Yeah, at this point, just in their own district budget. So there's a number of things that, we hear about.
Right. But at the same time, I find it very difficult for these districts to say that they're going to raise taxes when, at the local level, when they are getting so much of their budget from state dollars. I don't know how they can justify that.
Do they try to when they're talking with you?
When I talk to school board members, of course they say, well, we're doing everything we can do. But that's the argument really at all levels of government. I mean, we can say that too. Are we in reality? We have done things at the state level within the House where we try and cut cost. But, we're always, just like school district, giving raises, doing this, doing that. We talk about having smaller government, but every year we increase government.
Right. We're here with State Representative Kathy Rapp. This is the Morning Drill on Stream Television and the Allegheny News Talk Sports Network. What's different about this year and going through this budget process as opposed to last year?
Last year, the governor wanted, at the end of the day, his tax proposals for 4 years were several $1 billion. And we were able to hold off last year, mostly the House Republicans, in saying we're not raising taxes. Now, the biggest two taxes are the sales tax and the personal income tax. We did not raise either one. And when we passed the budget, we actually passed 4 budgets in the House last year, and we held off any taxes. We basically had a level-funded, budget. We actually had a lower budget than what was we had even proposed in June at the end of the day. So we were able to hold off on taxes. We weren't willing to raise taxes. The governor wanted taxes, so he vetoed the entire budget, which had never really been done since the Shapp years, is my understanding. And then we tried to do the emergency funding, and at the end of the day, it was June 29th, or not June 29th, I'm sorry, December 29th of last year, 2015, when the governor actually signed a budget, and the total funding was actually less than the budget that we passed out of the House in June. So it was a stalemate. We refused to raise taxes. Now in this budget, and of course then it took till, I believe it was March or April, when he finally signed the fiscal code for that budget. This year, unfortunately, I believe that no, we did not raise or expand the sales tax, and we did not raise the personal income tax. But we have a whole list of other taxes that we're raising on the people of Pennsylvania. And again, we're not raising personal income tax or sales. We're looking at increase in the cigarette tax, $1 per tax, 40% increase on vaping products, which we did not tax before. And as you know, I had an e-cigarette bill which prohibited the sale of e-cigarettes to minors. However, there was no tax on those products. It was a tax-free piece of legislation. But there is an increase of 40% to e-cigarettes, which I've had a couple businesses call me that sell e-cigarettes and have vape shops, and the gentleman that I spoke to yesterday said he knew of 300 businesses that are just going to close their doors. So that's actually a loss in revenue and not a gain in revenue, because when you have a business close the door, you're obviously not collecting a tax. There's a smokeless tobacco tax of 55 cents per ounce, and roll your own. And amazing, there's no cigar tax, which most of your higher income people are going to smoke cigars, not cigarettes. And the reason...
And from Cuba now.
Oh yes, we can buy from Cuba. But there's a manufacturer of cigars, and this is my opinion. There's a manufacturer of cigars over in the eastern part of the state, and that cigar factory is in the district of the Senate Appropriations Chairman. So we are not taxing cigars. We're taxing the little man's tobacco.
It's just a coincidence.
That's just a coincidence.
Yeah.
What if, I'm sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
There's been, or was, some criticism, maybe still out there, that the budget was a mix of measures, and part of the problem that still exists is the fact that Pennsylvania has a not so good credit rating because of a lot of the budget actions over the last many years. How can that be fixed, or can it be fixed at this point?
As far as the credit rating, I have not seen, I've been on the road, so I apologize. I haven't been in tune with the news. I've read the Keystone Report every morning, but I haven't seen an article where we've been downgraded as of yet.
Well, I don't think I've seen that either, but that was a criticism. That was a fear that would happen.
I do believe that the downgrade was a result of not being able to tackle the pension reform. And we have, I think, 3 different pieces of legislation out there. I am hoping that we are able to tackle pension reform, Mark, when we go back in the fall, which will be in September. Because I do think that's a huge part of our problem in Pennsylvania. And as I stated at the beginning of our conversation, we have a huge pushback from unions. In Pennsylvania, we have a defined benefit, and we need to switch that to a defined contribution, at least minimally for new employees. But we have a pushback even trying to change that for new employees. We're trying very hard to not change anything for retirees or for current employees. But there's a pushback even for new employees, which I don't know where that rationale comes from. However, the downgrade to our credit rating is largely due to the state's inability to be able to come to terms with pension reform.
And this is certainly no easy solution. I mean, you're going to go back in September, and it's going to be another...
Yeah, it'll be another battle, and it's an election year. So the members who are supported heavily by unions through campaign contribution will have a tendency to vote no on any pension reform. Unfortunately, for a lot of legislators, that's how they determine their vote, by their campaign contributions.
And sorry to interrupt, but we're down to just a couple minutes.
Okay.
And I know there's a lot of other things we want to mention. So I don't know if you want to pick one thing and kind of cover it, or if you just want to mention some other things you've been working on, but I know you've been pretty busy outside of the budget.
I had a main piece of legislation. I was a prime sponsor. It's actually the pro-life bill. It's House Bill 1948, which passed the House and passed judiciary in the Senate. It's a bill that we've been working on for a year and a half. We're not pushing it just because in this election year, because it can be a controversial bill as well. But this bill, currently under our Abortion Control Act in the state of Pennsylvania, you can elect to have an abortion up to 6 months, which is 24 weeks. We're trying to roll that back to 5 months, which is 20 weeks, because the research says that's when the baby feels pain. So that bill has passed in the House, and it is now in the Senate. We were hoping for a full Senate vote on the floor before we left, but that didn't happen. So I'm hopeful that that bill will pass in the Senate, even though the governor has said that he is going to veto. I don't know if people realize, but Governor Wolf and his wife Frances have been Planned Parenthood escorts, which just means they will escort women from their vehicle into an abortion clinic to have an abortion. So he's a very liberal governor. He's very pro-abortion, and it's not a surprise to me that he would veto this, because this bill also would prohibit dismemberment abortions, and that is exactly what it means, just what it says. It would prohibit the tearing a baby limb from limb inside the mother's womb as a method of abortion.
Oh. All right. It's great seeing you today. We'll probably see you in a couple weeks at the Crawford County Fair.
You might see me in a couple minutes up the street. I'm going to the introduction of the new police chief for Titusville. So, but yes, and I will be here Saturday for the Titusville Railroad 30th anniversary.
Very nice. Well, we look forward to seeing you. That's right. So a couple times, and then we'll sit down and chat with you maybe a little bit at the Crawford County Fair, too.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Sounds
Well, it's
great.
great to see you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Luke.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Mark.
We'll see you soon.
All right.
Morning Drill will continue right after this.
Thank you.